トビデオ
In the mid-80s, a young man named David Keith Riddick was at a Los Angeles comic convention when he was approached by someone who invited him to a showing that their club was organizing at the time. That someone was Fred Patton, and that club was the Los Angeles chapter of the Cartoon Fantasy organization, and the showing was of a copy of the motion picture Macross Do You Remember Love? Though the copy of the movie was a raw copy that was on a second-generation VHS tape, Riddick fell instantly in love with this new type of animation that was coming straight from Japan. He loved it so much that he couldn't sit by and speculate on what the plot was about like the rest of the club members. He wanted to break through the language barrier. So, with the help of a friend and their father who was fluent in Japanese, Riddick was able to translate and transcribe an English script for Do You Remember Love? It was a huge hit amongst the CFO crowd, and copies were soon getting passed around conventions. One of these copies ended up in the hands of a man named Kevin Seymour. Seymour got into contact with Riddick and asked him if he would be interested in translating materials that were being imported directly from Japan. At the time, Seymour was the head of the video department for a small LA company called Books Nippon. Owned by Japanese book distributor Nippon Shuban Hanbai, Books Nippon was a niche company that dealt in untranslated imports of Japanese books, music, and videos. After a meeting with his bosses, Sho Nagata and Satoshi Komatsu, Seymour, along with Riddick, were given full permission to start a special division of Books Nippon made specifically for importing anime. Founded in 1987, the company would be known as US Renditions. Starting out as a mail-order company for anime fans to get official raw copies of anime, US Renditions wouldn't get fully into localizing until they were contracted by Harmony Gold to localize an official soundtrack for the Robotech franchise. This seemingly small venture allowed Riddick and Seymour to come into contact with a lot of key people in the anime business, which would eventually lead them to start localizing anime for real. But unlike other distributors at the time like Streamline, Animego, and US Manga Corps, US Renditions were not looking to bring anime over for complete mass appeal. The company's mission statement was to be the company made specifically for the hardcore American otaku. As such, Riddick and Seymour were very selective of the titles they chose. They wanted titles that they knew would become guaranteed favorites for anime fans. So, in 1990, US Renditions released their first two localized anime titles, both of which were smash hits. The first one being Hideaki Anno's mecha OVA classic Gunbuster. The second one was, like Gunbuster, also a mecha OVA. Though not as renowned as the former, it's definitely a standout title of 80s mecha if there ever was one. Mia Alice is a pretty young woman who wakes up unexpectedly in a spaceship surrounded by all kinds of monsters. While escaping, she runs into three other people: wide-eyed idealist Roll Cran, childish crybaby Lamba Nom, and muscular spark plug Pi Thunder. As you could probably guess, she's my favorite. In The Great Escape, each of the four discover that they have been granted their own unique set of psychic powers, with Mia's being the most powerful and unstable. But after getting captured, they are brought before the person who gave them their powers in the first place, an eccentric mad scientist named Dr. Tarson. The good doctor explains to them that the four of them had been kidnapped from their planets of origin and reconditioned into powerful psychic super soldiers. However, this is done entirely at the cost of their memories, and for the time being, the only thing the four can remember is their names. The doctor lays out his plans for them and says that he intends to sell their services to the planet-conquering bunker space pirates led by the tyrannical Captain Galamos. But Mia and the others aren't really interested in having that job opportunity foisted on them, so they end up escaping using 4 spaceships called Dan Mechanics, which, using their psychic powers, they can combine to form the powerful psychic super robot Dangaio. And so begins the journey of our 4 heroes working together as a team to not only retrace their memories, but also defend off the forces of the bunker pirates, as well as Dr. Tarson's evil assistant, Gil Berg, who desires to curry favor with the pirates so he can be allowed to wreak havoc across the galaxy as he so pleases. Dangaio is one of those anime that I find really hard to pin down a legacy for. Is it completely unknown? Of course not. Dangaio is remembered fairly well as a standout mecha title of the 80s, enough that it was able to notch itself a coveted appearance in the Super Robot Wars franchise. At the same time though, it definitely feels like it got overshadowed by other mecha titles that came out in the same time, such as the aforementioned Gunbuster. And, as loath as I am to admit it, there's a very good reason for that. It's not that Dangaio is a bad anime, far from it. It's just that it's an anime that never got the chance to really reach its full potential. Even going into this anime blind, you can see on screen that this was an anime that fell victim to some dire behind the screen shenanigans, and the effect it had on the final product is there for all the world to see. With that in mind, Dangaio has a measure of quality that still makes it an enjoyable experience, especially for fans of all things robot and giant. And since I've kind of been neglecting the mecha genre for the past year or so, I think this is the best kind of anime to really reintroduce ourselves to the genre. And that is best in all caps. Dangaio was the brainchild of Toshiki Hirano. We've talked about him before in our Fight Xer 1 video, former contributor to famed hentai magazine Lemon People, turned established character designer and director for the big-time anime company AIC. Having been an integral part of successes like Xer 1 and Megazone 23, Hirano had the chance to create his own original OVA. What he envisioned was a big-budget tribute to the giant robot team shows that he and his co-workers grew up on. While such shows were still around at the time, they mostly occupied the realm of TV. No one had really given the Super Robot Team concept the OVA treatment. To that end, Hirano assembled an all-star staff of animators and artists who he knew would help craft a hot-blooded mecha anime of epic proportions. The biggest contributor being the animation director, who, if you know who he is, it's been far too long. If there is one true legacy Dangaio has left the world, it is helping solidify the reputation of Obari-sama. Masami Obari is Dangaio's secret sauce. It could conceivably work without him, but it is his presence that makes this anime so damn memorable in the first place. Not only was he the animation director, but he was also a major key animator and even did boarding for the first episode. And if you know Obari-sama, you know that he will be committed to going all out in his scenes. Dangaio has some of the best mecha fights ever conceived in the 80s. Obari has this mastery of the choreography to infuse so much force into every bit of the action. When the robots jump or fall, a billowing cloud of dust erupts from the earth. When the robots trade blows, you can feel all the weight in their heavy metallic punches as bits of debris fall off of them. And when the robots shoot their psychic waves, that's sidekick, not sidekick, brilliant trails of destructive lights pierce the atmosphere and fulminate into a smoldering outburst of fire and lightning. We even get the trademark Obari punch in this anime. But of course, Obari shouldn't get all the credit. He also had a top tier team of animators helping him out, like Masahiro Yamashita and Kazuhiro Ochi, both of whom are responsible for some of the gorgeous animation involving the 4 main characters' psychic powers. Aside from animation, Obari was also a key person in finalizing the design for the titular mecha. There were multiple mecha designers in this anime such as Shoji Kawamori and heavy metal king Koichi Ohara, but Obari deserves some credit for taking the original complex designs of Kawamori and turning them into something that would be animated better in motion. But if I could get away from talking about Obari for a second, impossible I know, other talent that made Dangaio what it is includes the always unsung Junichi Watanabe with his monster designs. The designs he created for the Bunker Pirates are one of his most complex and inspired designs. Giant mutant cyborg overlords who speak through the giant floating heads located in their chests. You almost can't tell where the machines end and where the organics begin. Though I bet those designs didn't earn him any friends in the animation departments. Hiruno's character designs are also a memorable part of the anime, with each character given a striking design that reflects their personality, like Lamba's shimmering innocent eyes and Pai's athletic muscular build with her voluminous floofy hair and thighs that look like they could crush a whole truckload of watermelons and... Sorry, lost my train of thoughts. Presentation-wise, the super robot themes of Dangaio are best reflected in the music composed by Michiaki Watanabe. A longtime veteran of composing music for Tokusatsu series, Watanabe gives Dangaio that trademark heroic brass that echoes throughout classic mecha, especially that intro. Seiyuu talent also can't be ignored here because all four of our main cast really brings the passion needed for such a super robot show. Mayumi Sho as Mia sells us her situation as an every woman being forced to choose between her desire to not fight and her desire to protect the universe with the proper sense of earnestness.
だけど私は覚えている。地球の日本という国、私の町。これは錯覚なの？それとも
Maya Okamoto is naturally doing her job playing the cutie with her role as Lamba.
そうすれば博士に消された記憶だって戻るはずだもん。早く連れてってくれなきゃ嫌だ嫌だ嫌だ!
And voicing Roll is the legendary Akira Kamiya, being able to play him both as an idealistic but unsure of himself hero,
僕のパワーって走らないと出ないみたいだ。
and a screaming warrior with the hottest of blood. But the role that impressed me the most was Naoko Matsui as Pai. At this point in her career, she was mostly known for playing heroic yet still very moe girl characters. So to have her effortlessly play a rough and tumble badass with a confident contralto really speaks to her range as a voice actress. As much as Dangaio really wants to replicate and celebrate a lot of the tropes associated with the classical era of giant robot shows, it at the very least tries to push the envelope of where this kind of story can go. The big story decision being making Mia the de facto protagonist. If you were to look at an out of context clip from Dangaio, it would be easy to assume that Roll is the protagonist, and that his female companions act as a sort of super robot harem of his. But with Mia as the protagonist, it allows for a more interesting character dynamic. Mia, despite being the one who remembers her past life the least, and has the least amount of control over her psychic powers despite being the strongest, is able to convincingly establish herself as the leader of the squadron by becoming the emotional center. She's the one who is able to unite the four of them as a team and make them realize that they are better off facing the vastly more powerful bunker pirates together rather than separately. It's best shown when, after they finish their battle with Gilberg on planet Earth, Mia's home planet, she's given the opportunity to return home and be able to forget about fighting potentially forever. But she refuses because that would leave the others at a significant disadvantage, with them not being able to combine into Dangaio.
私だけがふるさとに帰るわけにはいかない。それに私たち仲間なんだから。そうよ。命かけた仲間だから。
They also play with the idea of a starter villain with Dr. Tarson. He appears to be introduced as the main antagonist who has a reason for chasing down the Dangaio team. But as soon as the bunker pirates reveal themselves as a much more menacing and credible threat, he ends up having to form an uneasy alliance with the team and become a mentor to them in exchange for protection.
言っときますけど、私たちをどっかに売るつもりなら、きっぱりお断りしますからね。
いや、しかしな。
訓練しているのは
But what I think the most interesting thing about Dangaio's story is its overall structure. In each episode, the main engine that is driving the plot forward is one of our main characters regaining their memories, being forced to confront something or someone from their past, and overcoming that obstacle as a means of character development. Episode 1, Pai learns that she is the daughter of Captain Galamos and immediately abandons Team Dangaio to rejoin him, all just because she hates teamwork.
私たちは4人でいるべきよ。口で何と言ったってしょうがないさ。 止められるもんなら止めてみな。
However, when it gets revealed that her father only sees her as a means to an end, Pai renounces her birthright and rejoins the team, seeing the squadron as the best way to take down her father. Episode 2, Lamba learns that she is the princess of a kingdom who surrendered to the bunker pirates, and a former servant of hers, named Shazaria, wants to kill her in revenge. Lamba apologizes for the actions of her family, and after being forced to kill Shazaria and her cronies in self-defense, resolves to defeat the bunker pirates at any cost. Episode 3, Roll learns that he was a resistance leader on a planet that was taken over by the bunker pirates. He was also betrayed and killed by his own comrades before he was resurrected by Dr. Tarson. This left Roll traumatized, and is the reason why he is so nervous outside the cockpit.
その犯人が同じレジスタンスの仲間ということもあって、ロールの心には死への恐怖が深く染みついてしまっているのじゃ。戦うことに純粋すぎたロールはそのショックからまだ立ち直れずにいるんじゃよ。
Only when he confronts the men who killed him and destroys the bunker's base of operations is he allowed to fully embrace being a hero with his new comrades on the Dangaio team. It's a good structure for telling a story that progresses both the plot and its characters, and it does work. In theory. I'm sorry to say that while the story does have great ideas of how it should handle its plot and its characters, I don't feel it really executes those ideas to the fullest. Like, going back to that whole summary of character arcs, you do realize who's missing from all of that. Yes, in spite of her status as protagonist / point of view character, Mia is painfully outshone by her supporting teammates. Hirano fully cops to him and his team doing her character dirty by not giving her more of a chance to develop as the series went on. For being the leader of her squadron, she spends most of the time just awkwardly standing by on the sidelines while the rest of the cast gets to have their own journeys. It almost feels like she's really only there to remind the rest of the cast that, hey guys, this battle looks tough, let's combine into Dangaio, and they do it. And the damnedest thing about this anime is that Mia, the main protagonist, doesn't get to pilot Dangaio. That role goes to Roll, aka the only man on the team. Okay, I definitely get the desire to have Kenshiro do all that Mazinger pilot style screaming of moves, but you gotta give Mia something to do. I mean, it's not like Sho lacks the mecha pilot pipes.
Cross! Fight! Dangaio!
And by the end of the series, Mia's character is still at the same point where it was at the end of episode 1. She may have taken a leadership role, but she still has zero control of her psychic powers, she still doesn't know what her past life is, and for a leader, she does wind up in situations where she needs to be bailed out by her teammates a lot. What could have caused this? Well, I did say that watching this anime, you can feel that there was some behind the scenes turmoil going on. I can't exactly say what the specifics were, but watching Dangaio, you can see on screen that there is some outside interference going on. In the first episode, everything is executed flawlessly, a big budget super robot anime for the 80s. It's not until episode 2 where we begin to notice something ain't right. It's a 38-minute episode, and 11 minutes of it is devoted to a recap. Now, recaps aren't bad in and of itself, but when they are taking almost a third of the runtime, it speaks to a larger problem. It could either be budgetary issues, or Hirano and company ran short and they needed to extensively pad out the runtime. Whatever the case may be, it would end up causing some trouble in the mid-90s. When US Renditions shut down in 1995, the Dangaio license transferred over to Manga Entertainment. And because Manga Entertainment were total skinflints, they opted out of licensing the first episode because the second episode recap was good enough, I guess. Not realizing that, no matter how detailed it is, boiling a 45-minute episode down to an 11-minute recap is going to result in a far more inferior product.
Mia Alice 優しさと力を内に秘めた少女優しいから戦いそして優しいために悩むこともある
Speaking of inferior products, you may have noticed that the anime has been fluctuating in quality throughout this video. That is because when the series finally came to Blu-ray in 2016, the first 2 episodes were given loving remasters, while the final episode ended up being just a DVD transfer. This could be because the master tape for that episode is rumored to have been lost in an earthquake. But even if it was given a similar remaster, there's something about this final episode that makes it look a little more economical. The good animation for the fight scenes are still there, but there appears to be a lot more cost-cutting measures that weren't there in the last 2 episodes. Characters look less detailed, cells are reused, a lot more still frames, etc. My theory is that this could be because resources and staff were being allocated to AIC's other big budget OVA project that was also going through its share of production issues, and its investment caused it to take priority over Dangaio. But the big production issue that burns itself into Dangaio's legacy the most comes at the very end. I should warn you, I'm about to spoil the entire end sequence for Dangaio, so get ready for that. So shortly after the Dangaio team fulfill their mission on Roll's planet, they are immediately attacked by a resurrected Gilbert who is armed with a more powerful robot. Dangaio puts up a valiant effort, but Gil's mech just ends up completely decimating the team. But before Gil can land the killing blow, Dr. Tarson sacrifices himself to both buy the Dangaio team time, as well as escape via a charged up warp laser. With the last of its psychic reserves, Dangaio is able to launch one final psychic wave on Gil, disabling him but not killing him, before being warped to an unknown location in deep space. The final scene of the episode is Gil once again swearing vengeance on the Dangaio team, before we cut to the destroyed remains of Dangaio floating in space, the only intact parts being our 4 heroes' cockpits where they lie in an unconscious state. And what happens next?
Wait a minute, what happened? What happens next? Come on, let's see the next episode.
That's it?
What?
The show was cancelled after that.
Well, cancelled isn't the right word here. According to Hirano, after they completed that episode of Dangaio, he came to the startling realization that he had completely written himself in a corner. He and his staff struggled to figure out where to go with Dangaio and how they would get the team to have their final confrontation with Gilbert and the Bunker Pirates. By mid-1990, it was decided that Dangaio would be put on the shelf indefinitely because the staff desperately needed to be focused on projects that were actually progressing. It wouldn't be until 2001 when Hirano came out of semi-retirement to direct the series Great Dangaio that he would return to the franchise. But that's for a future video. In a way, it feels like Hirano and his team bit off more than they could chew with Dangaio. It was a project that required big amounts of animation, story, and characters, and to keep that amount going for an extended period. Who knows? Maybe if they had kept the momentum going from the first episode, Dangaio may have been seen as more of a classic rather than a cult series for hardcore mecha fans. But even with its story completely compromised, Dangaio still managed to uphold its promise to deliver super robot mecha action to the realm of large-scale OVAs. It is still some of the best animated giant robot action seen in 80s anime, just showing off how good this era was to the field of animation, with people like Obari taking the standard to a whole new level. Whatever story problems Dangaio has is almost irrelevant with just how much it truly understands the appeal of mecha anime. It may be incomplete, but what is there is some of the best the genre has to offer.